Hi and welcome to our program. Today we are visiting Forbi Gadeliv to understand a little bit better about their projects, such as Pant for Pant, Poverty Walk and South Harbour Janitors. Let's check it out.
Hi,
Ellen.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm fine. Welcome to
Nice
our
to see you
office
again.
and our headquarters. Yeah, same.
So, what do you want to show us today? Where are we?
We are at the harbor in Århus, Jægersgade, opposite Værstedet, and we are located in a really good place because all of our projects is directed at those people who come in the area, especially on Værstedet. We are a non-government organization. We're totally private. We don't get money from the state or the commune. No, we're self-sufficient due our working projects. And our working projects have this, what you call it, a type of spunk where we try to make some meaningful social work for the people who come at Værstedet.
So how did the organization start?
It started more than 10 years ago. That was the leader at Værstedet at that point, who had the idea that all of the people who come there are a representative of the society that we live in. So therefore there's a lot of people who have a lot of potential but don't have the means to live out this potential. We should remember that is homeless people, former homeless people, some have alcohol abuse or drug abuse, some have a diagnosis, a psychiatric diagnosis, and therefore can't function as we call it in Denmark, a normal person in society. The social skills are therefore not that good because you have your problems but you have potential. And it started a bit more than 10 years ago with the idea that who is better to tell about the problems in society than people themselves who live in that situation. So we started with guide tours at that time. Betty is one of our first guides and I've been guide for 10 years. We had approximately 60 different guides over the years, and in the moment you have 15 till 20 guides, 15 that are active guides. It's like every other society, there's rich and there's poor, and those who are above the others on the ladder sometimes forget to look down and see what is happening. Because I'm in a good situation, I don't need anything, I got my job, I got my money, and so sometimes we forget what is surrounding us. But the problems are still there, and the idea is if we can get some of the people from Værstedet to go out and tell Mr. and Mrs. Denmark how the situation is in reality, maybe we can change some things.
Yeah. And how was that first approach? How did people take? Because it's usually to share quite personal experiences, stories, is a bit of exposing yourself.
It is.
How was it at the beginning? Were people okay with that? Were people willing to do that? Did it take some convincing?
It took in the beginning. It took some conviction because it was like, can I do it? What is the purpose? Why should I do it? But Ove, who was the leader, who's now working here for the NGO, he said, of course you can do it. If you want, I know you can do it. If you believe in yourself, you can do it. and some some are easier to convince that it's the right way to go. Some have said from directly, no, I don't want that, because they want the anonymity they have. They don't want to expose themselves and so forth. Others have said, yeah, right away, I do it. And some have need more conviction in, well, is it a good idea? And I had to think about it. But everybody who started as a guide, or almost everybody, I think it's one or two, said, I tried it, it's not for me, and that's fair. They have tried, and it's fair, of course. But most of us, because I'm a former guide also, that is, you don't start alone with a whole group. Here's a group, now you're a guide. You have a test trial where you go with an experienced guide, 2 or 3 tours, so you can see how a tour is built, how to communicate to this group, and so forth.
It's kind of a short course.
Yeah, crash course. It's a crash course, because some are so good that they don't only need to go with a guide once. Others would like to go twice or something.
So you
because
teach them how to communicate and how
to they see the route the guide is going, listen to what that guide is telling, so they have an idea, what am I going to tell when I'm going with a group tomorrow? Where should my focus be? Should it be on my lifespan? Should it be on my addiction, or problems with the psychiatric system, or a combination, or whatever? And in the beginning it's also always a bit difficult, because you have to find your own format. You have to find out what is good for me to tell, what should I keep behind, because many of us have so many dark secrets that we also should remember that it brings up the past. And that is good and that is bad, because you are reminded of why you are in your life right here, right now, and if it's addiction and psychiatric diagnosis and everything, then it can be a bit hard. But if you think about it, also as a guide, it's a form of therapy, because the more I tell my story, no matter who is listening, the more I put words on my own story, I realize what and who I am, and maybe through that also can get the motivation to say, well, I don't want to be an addict the rest of my life. I don't want to be isolated and alone the rest of my life. I have to do something. And the more you put your words on it, then you develop yourself. For me, it's like an hour at a therapist. Actually, I find it's much better than being at a therapist, because he is sometimes asking leading questions. But when I'm telling through that 1.5 to 2 hour guide tour it's my own words. I decide how much I want to tell, and when people are asking, I decide if I want to answer or not, with no strings attached and no commitment and so forth. Sorry.
Do you feel like this therapeutical part is more about people being able to express themselves, or is also about the feedback that sometimes can happen from the people from the tour?
It's both. It's both. Okay. Yeah, it's not 50-50, in my opinion. But that's my subjective opinion. I would say 2/3. Is my own expression and my words that makes me realize more and more who I am. But and the 1/3 is the response you get, because the response is very important, because when you're talking to people like a group of 15, statistically we know 3 of them has been beaten at some time as a child. 1 in 8 have been sexually abused.
In Denmark?
And statistically in Denmark. And 10% of the Danish population have an alcohol problem as an adult, and so forth.
So it's very
So you get a response that people recognize some things in what you're saying, and then when they're asking questions, then you can hear that they are interested, and sometimes, it's not always, but sometimes someone comes to you when you go from one station to the next and tell you, I know a guy who has problems, or my mother has problems, or I have problems, and so forth. I am bipolar. I'm very open about it. And for those who don't know what bipolar is, in the old days it was called manic depressive. So either I'm up in the sky or down in the cellar. And when I tell that very openly, very frankly, what it is and what it does to me, I get the response, I'm so glad you told about it, because I'm manic depressive and I'm scared to talk about it. But now, when you have told about it, it has given me courage to maybe open me more often.
So it's also very important and powerful experience for someone.
Yeah, I get goosebumps every time I tell about it. I get goosebumps, no shit, every time, because then it gives me meaning. It gives me a fulfillment. It has the purpose why I am doing these tours and talking about my life. It's fulfilled because people receive it and it helps other people at some point. Often you don't know that it's helping them because you don't see it with your own eyes. But we get sometimes this response. And that's important, and it's so giving, and that is what motivates the guides and in talking about this, and in the janitors and the pants for pant people. There's a recognition. There's an accept. And when you have recognition and accept, then you get more and more happy and motivated, and therefore, hopefully, would like to do something for yourself and make your life changes in a better way. But what is a better way? That is up to you to decide, and me to decide. And we don't point fingers. We don't say, we think you should go that way or that way or that way mentally. People have different reasons for doing it. People are getting different responses mentally and physically. And what they use it for, what they get in feedbacks and so forth, that is not important. The important thing is that they use what they are given, the tools they are getting, and
Do you still do it?
Yeah, sometimes. It's seldom because it sits in the office and have a lot of administration and so forth. I do go out sometimes in private groups, a church group or a højskole or efterskole for a larger group of maybe 50 or 100 and so forth. But we have so many good people who can do those, so it's very seldom. And guided tours, I'm not doing them anymore because we have so many good guides. It's only if for some reason we have a group and the guide hasn't turned up because of illness or something and we can't find another guide, then of course I jump in and take that. But it's in extra circumstances if I do that.
Okay, speaking more specifically about the guides, is the goal of this for people to stay in this project for a long time, or is it more like to give them the tools to move into something else if they want to? Like, how do you... Is there something like this? Maybe it's not on purpose that happened?
Some are... It's a tricky question. We don't say now you're a guide and now you have to be a guide for like 5 years and then you can move on. people move on in their own tempo.
Okay.
So if a guide after 1 year says, now I told my story like 50 times or 40 times or 100 times or whatever, and said, it's enough for me because I moved myself, so forth. Now I need to do something else. I don't need it anymore. I don't have the enjoyment anymore, whatever the motivation must be. But we don't have a deadline. We have new guides and a new guide starting tomorrow. We have guides who have been guides for like all the time we existed. So we don't say yes or no or kick everybody. That's the one guide who decides for himself, herself, how far will I take this, how long time will I be in this project. Of course, some of the guides who have stopped over the years have stopped because they moved on.
Yeah.
And moved on can be anything.
Yeah.
But, and I mean anything in like moved on, they had a personal travel, and some have maybe resignated and said, whatever, my life is what my life is, and that's that. I'm tired of working with it. That could be one motivation. But another motivation, and that is mostly the case, to say, I've been a guide for 4 years. It's brought me so much. And I moved from here till there, and now I'm ready for a new chapter in my life.
Yeah.
And that is an important thing, that give people the possibility and the means to reach an eventual goal. But we don't say, now you reach your goal, you have to move on. No, we don't do that.
I just wanted to understand if the goal of this was to give people a more permanent or a temporary position, kind of, but okay, I see that depends on the case.
We take every person for the person that there is. It's not like we take, let's say you want to be a guide, and you come in and we talk to you, and then okay, we find out, okay, you're rude, you have this background, you speak English, and then we take and put you in a box. We don't use boxes. We look at you and see what your frame is about, and this picture, and then we work out from that. So we take everybody individually, and that's the most important thing, because if you come and talk to someone, and first of all you have the feeling they're not listening, then you don't want to talk to them. Yeah. Secondly, if they try to figure out before your speech who you are, then you don't want to talk to them. So we don't do that. We take you for what you are, and we try to figure out what is your possibilities, and then we try to nurse those possibilities. We don't say you shall do that or you should do that. We tell you have the possibility. We believe in you. We believe you can fulfill this assignment or whatever, a task, whatever you will call it. Don't put names on it either. But we see we try to figure out what is your potential, and then it's up to you to get. Maybe to do something about it, to say yes or no, I want to participate, I will try it out with our help, of course. If you need that, we are there for support. We are not there for pointing fingers. We are there for taking your hand. So we don't lead you, we follow you in that sense.
Okay. So you don't have like a criteria or something to accept new guides?
Minimal criteria, of course. You need to have fair communication skills. You need to be at a point in your life where it's meaningful that you are a guide. Because there are some, unfortunately, they're not ready to become a guide today. Okay. But maybe in a month or in 3 months, you moved on in your life, and let's say you're hard on drugs, well, then it's maybe not that good idea that you walk around with a group of youngsters to talk about this if your communication skills is impaired because of your drug abuse. Then after a few months you come, I'm not taking that many drugs anymore or whatever, but that is just one example. But we have criteria, but we are very large about how we use those criteria. Okay. That's important to say, because we look at you right here, right now, and we know people from our collaboration with Værsted and so forth. So we already know a lot about you. Maybe not knowing it, but we know a lot about you in some sense, and therefore we know if it's meaningful to wait a bit or to start right away, or how we should put it. It's absolutely not black and white. It's totally rainbow, if we should put colors on it. Yeah.
Okay, that's nice. And you mentioned that right now you have between 15 and 20.
Yeah, active guides. Yeah.
So how do people choose specifically a guide? How does it work?
People who are booking a tour. And that could be schools, that could be the university, it could be a different kind of NGOs or the commune or whatever. They book a tour, and we find a guide we find is suitable for them. We have some who is really good to talk to youngsters.
So you can personalize it according to the group?
Yeah, some would rather talk to their own age, or adults or elderly or whatever. So we try to say, well, if you don't have the urge to talk to youngsters 14, 15, 16, then of course we give you some tours with adults. But sometimes, because many are coming again and again with a new group from school, the same teacher, the same priest, whatever, they then say, well, we had this guide before, can we get that guide again? Okay. Or now we've been on a tour with that guide 3 times, can we get another guide? Okay. And then we of course try to fulfill if it's meaningful to do that. But sometimes they want someone who is talking about the psychiatric system. Okay, then we find a guide that's good and have experience with that. Sometimes the question could be a former female prostitute. Okay. Then we find a guide who has experience in that field or know about these things and so forth. So it's possible to get a guide that is directly matched to a group, but normally we find a guide for the group.
Okay, okay.
But again, there's no rules.
Yeah. You're mentioning that schools and churches and everything in the commune books the tours. Yeah. Are those the main customers, let's say?
At least half of our customers are from the educational system. Okay. And from, when I say priests, in Denmark we have confirmation, the Christian confirmation, we are Protestants as a state church, so, bare kom ind, Claus. So they have in the 7th or 8th grade the education for preparing you for your confirmation is in the hands of the priests in Denmark. And when I got my confirmation in like 81, Jesus, many years ago, I said 2001, then it was like we had to learn psalms and hymns and verses from the Bible and so forth, and it was whatever, that was then. Today the focus is much more society oriented. Okay. And what we do here is kind of Yeah, what you call it in English? In Denmark we say næstekærlighed, also love for your next of kin. That we so they would like to, the priests who are doing these courses or education for the coming confirmants, they would like to give them this tour to see what society is like today. So it's not just they get a tour and that's it. They talk about it before the tour, after the tour, and put it in perspective with other segments of the society. So it's not just the bottom of society, but also the top of society. And why? Because if you think about it, if you talk about it in a godly perspective, I'm an agnostic, but I can see the point in from the church side to make the youngsters understand why we have this diverse society and what it does to people, and why we have it and what can we do about it and so forth. Because it's the youngsters today that are the adults tomorrow, and those are them who can change society from wherever their position will be in life. And the thought is also when we have the youngsters to tell about the consequences. If you make a choice, every choice has a consequence. But if you make bad choices, it has bad consequences. And suddenly you reach a point where you made so many bad decisions that all that is left is bad choices. You don't choose between good and evil anymore. Now you only have the possibility to choose between evil and evil, because you now are at a point in your life where the opportunity is gone because of your choices, former choices. So if we can scare someone from not trying to smoke hashish or take drugs or whatever, well, then that's a success criterion. But we don't measure it in that. But it's a thought among some of the guides we have and have, that if one in a group of 15 says, I'll never do that, I'll be careful what I choose, then it has a purpose. And also the importance of family, friends, and so forth, because many of us, me self-included, have been lonely the whole life. Been lonely the whole life, and when you are lonely, then it's the possibility you get depression. How do you medicate your depression? Well, if I take drugs, my brain goes on pause. I'm not thinking about anything. I don't have to think about whatever this or that or that, and I get peace in my mind for this moment. But we know that if you take drugs, suddenly you are not controlling the drugs are controlling you. And that is the message we try to get out to youngsters, among other messages, of course. We are not saying don't do it, but we are telling our own story. I made bad consequences, this happened, I made this, and this happened. And then they, in their own mind, can put in a picture of maybe themselves. Okay, I don't want to repeat his mistakes if I can avoid it.
That was it for this program, but stay tuned for the next one. In the meantime, don't forget to check our Facebook page, BURT, for updates on our schedules and programs. See you soon.